Hello, everyone, or not. Hello, everybody. All right, you've all had cupcakes now, so everybody's got sugar and caffeine, I'm assuming. All right, so I think this is the last time you'll need to listen to me. It's really bright. I will sit. Hang on. I think this is the last time you'll you'll have to listen to me for the workshop. Um, but this last part of today is a career panel that Anjali put together. And so I'm just helping to moderate it for her because I thought she should be actually on the panel. And so we're gonna do that. So this, let's see. We also have, we can't see them at the moment, but we'll be able to see them in a minute. We also have two people remote. So I am going to, all right, so first of all, this panel is, we did something similar last year, but last year's career panel was more academic job focused. And so if you are looking for academic job advice, I encourage everybody to go to the Sagan Summer Workshop YouTube channel and look for that talk. That was part of the proto workshop last year. This panel today is going to be focused more on transitions from astronomy into adjacent science positions and careers. And so this is moving from academia to something else. And so there you have the two sides of the coin there. And let's see, I think that's it. Okay, so I'm going to do a very quick introduction of the panelists. You can see them all on the slide here. This slide will go away in a moment because we want you to see the other two panelists that are remote right now. But I'm going to basically give like a one-line intro for each of the panelists, and then I will let them elaborate more on their own. So, okay, so first, I'll start with the in-person folks, and then when we get to the online folks, Elise, I'll ask you to bring them up. Okay. So first, I'm going to start to my far left, Farisa Morales. She's currently the program manager for the Astronomy and Heliophysics Research and Analysis Office at JPL, where she helps guide our researchers in putting in good proposals to be more competitive. Farisa wears a lot of different hats. She's also a research scientist at JPL and a dean at the Los Angeles Mission College. And she also teaches at local community colleges and universities. So she does a lot of different things and can answer a lot of questions. No pressure. And then next to me, I have Anjali Tripathi. If you came to the proto workshop yesterday, the proto workshop is run by Anjali. This is part of what she does. So she's also a JPL scientist, and she leads the science communications for the Exoplanet Exploration Program, of which I am the manager. She is NASA's Exoplanet Science Ambassador. She has experience in public policy and previously served in the White House as well. Okay, while we bring them up, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've done. I'm not actually part of the panel, but in addition to being here at Caltech for 20 years and now being at JPL working for NASA headquarters. I'm also the senior vice president for the American Astronomical Society. So Brian gave a talk just before the break on one of the AAS journals. So if you have questions about AAS, how to get involved. If you have questions about the journals, it's probably better that you ask Brian. I used to be on the publications committee, but that was like I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago. But I'm happy to talk about anything else related to, excuse me, the AAS. Okay, and great. We have our other two panelists up here. So we have Pierre Christian, who is a senior data scientist at the climate nonprofit WattTime. So WattTime is the name of the nonprofit. Prior to transitioning into this position, he was a professor of physics at Fairfield University, which is a small liberal arts college. And then finally, last but not least, we have Arpita Roy, who is the director of the Astrophysics and Space Institute at Schmidt Sciences, which is a private philanthropic entity. And previously, she was an astronomer at Space Telescope Science Institute and a postdoc at Caltech. All right, with that, I'm gonna ask them a few questions and get their feedback, and then there should be time at the end for folks to stand up and ask questions, and if you're online, to ask questions online as well. So we'll go through one by one. I'd like you all to briefly describe your current role and the path you took to get there. Mentioning any highlights that or unexpected turns of events that you encountered. So, all right, you've got the microphone. We'll start with Anjali.
So, quick show of hands for the people in the room. How many of you have always wanted to be an astronomer? Okay, and how many of you are sure you want to be an astronomer in the future? Okay, so all of you, I admire your resolve and knowing what you want to do. I was not you, right? So I grew up in LA. I went to college thinking I wanted to study earthquakes because I hated having to move out of my house for a year as a kid. Got to college, learned that going to the East Coast is not the right place to study earthquakes. And so I studied physics and along the way discovered astrophysics and thought, ooh, that's pretty. But I got to the end of college. I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And I didn't want to commit 6 years to a PhD. So I said, I'll go and do a master's in England where it's not like I failed out of a PhD. Fun fact, if you're interested in studying abroad, there are lots of fellowships that will fund this. You should apply. They even funded someone like me, and I did not have all A's. So fast forward, I arrived at my PhD program at the CFA later, and the whole time I was like, you know what? I like astrophysics, but I also like all these other things. I think I'm not the best researcher. I think other people should do that, and I'll go and do something else. And so at the end of my PhD, I did what every astrophysics PhD student, which is I applied for a job at the White House, and I happened to get it. And so I did that. So I served at the end of the Obama administration, the beginning of the first Trump administration. At that point, I left the federal government and had various jobs. I moved back to LA for personal reasons and actually went and worked in industry. So I worked at Raytheon, which is now RTX. So if you want to talk about the aerospace industry, they use IDL. Did you know that? Like some people pay for licenses. And then found my way into JPL, where I originally came in was half of the government relations office focusing on climate change. Because when I worked in the government, I worked at the USDA, the Agriculture Department, and the White House Office of Science Technology Policy. So working on science policy and climate policy. And here at JPL was bringing a lot of climate work to the lab, and gradually got pulled back into exoplanets, which is what my PhD was about in undergraduate work. And so all that to say is I always loved outreach. I always loved science communication, right? I always think of my career sort of three-part: science communication, policy, and the science of it. And all of that is wanting to help people, do better with their lives. And so you might have seen up there, like I, for a while during COVID, was the head of vaccine data for LA County Department of Public Health, which was just a side gig for fun as a volunteer. So I think my career's had lots of unexpected twists and turns, but I'm here now back to reading the archive, working with astronomers, but on the side, I write papers about sea level rise. So you never know.
And you're 152? Should we mix it up and go with the Zoom?
Sure, let's do that. Okay, let's go to Arpita first then.
Okay, this is going to be similar in some ways to Anjali and a little bit different too. So I think always had an eye on non-academic careers, even when I was really interested in astrophysics. Mainly because I kind of wanted to choose to do astrophysics every day, not just do it because I didn't have a better idea. And I think at every stage, like after grad school, after my postdoc, I did look around before I decided that a postdoc was the best thing to do. And so I was ultimately going down the academic straight and narrow. And so I was in a tenure track position at Space Telescope, working on JWS decommissioning, which was all very exciting. And I had been building several ground-based extreme precision radio velocity instruments, and they were about to go online. KPF was about to be shipped to Hawaii. It was sort of the culmination of all of this science I had been working on. But something felt like not big enough at that point. Like I'd been building my research group, ready to use the data, and I just felt so limited in how many people I could work with and how many problems I could work on. And I didn't know what the answer was. I just knew I had this question of like, how do I make more impact? How do I be more global? And just the number of hours in the day was such a limitation. So I started talking to people about other jobs, things like NASA HQ, program scientists that did kind of sat at these flexure points for science. But I was still more or less happy in my tenure track role. And then kind of out of the blue, I got this message on LinkedIn that asked me if I wanted a job that had all these words I'd been searching on, impact, global, and I thought it was spam at first, because they said it was a science philanthropy that supported a lot of astrophysics, and we had been building an instrument that was largely philanthropically funded. So I thought I knew the landscape pretty well, and I'd never heard of this place. But then I reached out to our good friends at Heising Simons to ask if they could help me understand the landscape a bit better, and they vouched for this organization. So I started talking to them, and they painted a beautiful picture of being able to make impact in astrophysics with resources. And it took a long time to make the switch. It took me almost 8 months to make the decision. But I did it, and it was a bit of a jump into the unknown because it was also it wasn't a very new organization, but it was an organization that liked to kind of put its grantees in the forefront and not itself. So I often didn't know what they had done in astronomy. But I'll say it's been very fun and awesome. And there was always more astronomy going on than I knew before I came inside. And so who knew being in science philanthropy was a job? I certainly hadn't considered it, but it's been wonderful.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes. All right, Pierre, let's hear from you. What was your journey like?
Yeah, so I think I'm might be different from the other panelists in which like I have no connection at all to astrophysics anymore. Like literally no connection to astronomy. I am basically made a full pivot to the industry. So if Anjali asked that question to me earlier about like whether you always know you want to do astrophysics or whatever, I would say yes. Like that's like since I was like quite young, I wanted to be in astronomy and astrophysics, and I've like done the trek through to like getting a faculty job. But I ended up like not being I don't think I was a good match for being a faculty in the end, like which is something that I didn't realize before becoming faculty. And I've decided to pivot to tech. So I'm now in a tech company. We are a tech climate nonprofit. So we are a nonprofit, but we are in the industry. So we provide climate emissions data to probably like a lot of devices that you use. So for example, if you use like an iPhone, and iPhone has like a clean charging feature, that's us. That's our software that powers that. I am proud to say that I have not checked the new page on archive in 2 years. So that's like how much I move myself outside of astronomy. So yeah.
Yeah, that's totally fine. All right. Thank you so much. Okay. Last but not least, Farisa.
Well, my trajectory, I guess that we all have twists and turns. I like Anjali. Anjali. I also wasn't sure what I wanted to do when I grew up. So I got married right out of high school and had a couple of kids. Oh, a little closer? Okay. And so got married right out of high school, had a couple of kids. And then I said, what do I want to do when I grow up? Right. So I was like 22 years old and I was breastfeeding my little baby, and the other one was growing up when I went to the local community college to explore college education. Obviously, there's a little bit of background before that, right? Because I was raised by a single mom who had 3 kids, and she was struggling to just make ends meet on a daily basis. And so college talk was not something we were covering on a, daily basis either. So getting married after high school was the product of my mom wanting to return back to Mexico and get more support to help with my siblings. And at that point, I'm 18. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to stay. I will try to make ends meet here. And I stayed with the boyfriend who became the husband, who became the father of my kids. And so went to community college and found out that, oh, science is great. Like I always liked math in high school and, the rest of school since I was little. I like math. They're little puzzles, but I didn't know what it was for. And I like science, but I didn't know I wanted to become a scientist, right? So it is in college, right, that as an adult in my early 20s that I began taking these courses. And as I'm finishing the 3rd year before transferring, because I was taking everything and I liked everything. So I'll share that the counselor asked me one day when I finally went to the academic counselor, like, what is your major and why are you taking calculus 2? And I said, well, I don't know. It was the next thing. You have all these courses. You don't have to do the whole catalog, right? You can declare a major and it depends on your major. And so I was like, I have no idea. He said, well, it looks like you're getting A's on everything. And I said, yeah, they're really hard and they're not easy, but I'm enjoying the whole thing. So he said, well, why don't you just declare a math major then and exploit that skill? I said, oh, that was the first time that anybody said I should be a math major. I was like 23, 24 already, right? So I did because he said so. And so I was a math major. I was taking physics. To be a math major, you have to take applied sciences. And so the physics professor said one day, is anybody interested in an internship at JPL? And 2 of us raised our hand, and the gentleman in front of me wanted to know which weeks of the summer these internships took place. And I wanted to know, what is JPL? So being raised here in Southern California, right, I didn't even know where JPL was. So he kindly explained, it's the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, et cetera. And I said, oh, that sounds interesting. Let me apply. I applied, I got in. At the same time, I was applying to transfer. So I applied to UCLA as a math major, and I applied and I got in. I'm thinking, what am I going to do with these babies? They're still alive.
That's not an easy feat, Joel. Trust me, I know.
So the babies, they went to, kindergarten, elementary school. I was able to, transfer and do JPL internship. And from that internship, I stayed at JPL. So it's been 25 years since. And it's been a long career. So through that internship, I learned about JPL and what it did. And so my math major became boring because, sorry, any math majors in the crowd? Sorry. I just needed meaning. So I needed to apply it to something. So I influenced by this internship, and I saw the engineers and the scientists, and I want to be one of those. I changed my major at UCLA to astrophysics, graduated with astrophysics from there. And I'll tell you more about it as we get through the questions. But as you can see, with juggling the family, prioritizing on the babies, because they're innocent human beings, right? And then there's mommy trying to figure it out. I was influenced, and I stayed at JPL. I was offered to stay, and I learned a lot. Grew up, I met Elise and Dawn and so many people in the crowd. And just became, obviously I'll mention this, that I skipped the postdoc, which is what most of my colleagues do, because I was basically doing my apprenticeship by doing my education at the same time as working part-time at JPL. And I became a regular employee after a few years. And finished the bachelor's, master's, PhD, and stayed there. And now for a few years, I've been a program manager over astrophysics and heliophysics research and analysis office. And it's been a lot of fun to work with all the rest of the astrophysicists in our division to come on, get me these reports and stimulate new proposals. So I'll tell you more about the trajectory as we go along. But I also then started to explore in academia. So I'm a dean and I teach and so on, but we'll talk some more. Thanks.
Okay. So everybody's got a slightly different story, right? And okay, so my next question is kind of 2-part. How did you find your job? And then how did you prepare to leave academia? So let's start online. Let's start with Pierre.
Yeah, I remember thinking that I wanted to move from academia to something that is well, like beneficial to a wide range of humanity or like so I decided to move to climate, and I know there's like a lot of climate data jobs, but there is at the time when I was applying, it wasn't that very well curated. So you can't just go, you go to LinkedIn, like there's like a bunch of lists of jobs, but they're not, like it's not very complete. And also like if you apply randomly throughout LinkedIn, like often like you just don't get any response. Uh, so what I did was I went to a Slack channel of climate data scientists basically, and they have like a job board of like, you want to go to climate, like here's like a job board, and someone from my current company sent an application there, and I just like sent him a message saying like, hey, I think I want to apply to this. So and then he said like, yeah, go ahead, apply. And then I applied there, and like go through like the entire job interview process, and that's how I got my current job. In terms of preparing to jump out of academia, I think there are multiple things that one needs to do jumping off academia, especially to industry. And that is, first off, like you need to somehow tailor your resume, or like it's not like tailoring the resume. It's more like figuring out what exactly you have that could be useful in the industry. And you never know, like sometimes you might pick up like a thing or two for a project in academia that you've only used like once or twice. But turns out that's like actually very sellable in the industry. So sometimes it's good to talk to someone who's already in the industry. Maybe like if you have friends from graduate school or something like that who's already in the industry, and they will be able to tell you like what sorts of skills that you have would actually match quite well with something that industry health needs, because like uh, it might not be something that you advertise in academia. I think like for myself, like my current role uses like a lot of more of statistics, more stuff like that I wouldn't call myself like an expert of in academia. But turns out that's like the part of my skill set that's more sellable in the industry. So that's like important, like for you to be able to, if you want to jump to the industry, to be able to identify the kinds of skills that you would be able to sell outside of academia. Number two is you need to prepare yourself on how to do interviews. And especially if you are, I applied basically only to tech companies. And if you do like tech interviews are totally different than academia interviews. I've done like a lot of academia interviews for postdocs and faculty, and academia interviews are kind of like softball. You know, you kind of are more tested on kind of like the soft skills on whether you match the company or something like this. In a tech interview in the industry, like you would do like coding, like pair coding, you would do like pair problem exercises. You'll like, do actual, like they'll analyze your technical skills that way rather than reading through your resume and figuring out where your technical skills are. And this is like totally not a, like this is like not at least I don't think it's a good way to find like a good employer, but this is like the way the industry has been doing it. And you need to learn how to interview. You need to learn how to think on your feet and like do like coding interviews. And sometimes that's like very annoying to do, but there are practices that you can do. There are like there are books that you can look at. There are like a website you can go to do like practice uh, coding interviews and practice data science interviews and things like that. But that's like actually something that if you want to do jump to the industry, that's like something that's very beneficial to do to prepare.
Thank you. So there are also AAS webinars that will help you prepare a resume and how to interview and things like that. So yeah, those are really good points, Pierre. Thank you. Okay, Farisa. So just to recap the question, how did you prepare to leave? How did you find your job, and what did you do to prepare to leave academia?
Yeah,
Yours is kind of a special case.
kind
I
of,
guess.
yeah, continue. Right? It found me, right? It found me. So the program manager role that I've had for about 5 years, and historically, this role has been done by a scientist at JPL, and it's because you need to have that relationship between the community that you serve, all the astrophysicists section at JPL, and administration, right? The directorate, et cetera. And so historically it was done by a scientist, and the scientist was specifically retiring. And so they started to look for who wants to fill in this hole. And in general, when you're a scientist, you have, 10 projects that are going on, and you're busy and you're coding and you're doing all these things. And so they kind of shopped around, and I was probably the only dumb one that said, okay, I'll do okay, I'll give it a try. I thought it was interesting to expose yourself and jump into a position where you're going to be in taking information from like all these other fields. You already are encouraged, our whole life to cross-pollinate and see what your colleagues are doing and how they're doing, and maybe a little, what other ideas you might gain. But so that was, I think, the challenge that I decided to accept in that moment, and it actually turned out to be a lot of fun. And I found that maybe some of those parenting skills came in handy. Don knows about that. Yeah, like teenagers. I had 200 teenagers. So that came in handy. I think that having some of that tendency for cohesiveness and getting the crowd going when it comes to there's a proposal opportunity, and making some noise and see who's interested and having conversations, et cetera. So I think that job sort of found me because it was open. So I jumped in after a couple of, hey, are you sure you don't really want to consider it? Like, okay. Yeah. And then the other with a dean, it was more of an evolution from, I was the chair of physics and astronomy at a community college because I had done the tenure thing on the side as well. I was teaching physics and astronomy on the side as I was a scientist at JPL. And eventually I applied for a full-time job because it was open, and I figured, I can juggle both. Why not, right? And it turned out that, yeah, I could juggle both. And I became the chair. And as the chair, I noticed that there was a lot of processes that, man, if I was the dean, I would help fix that. And so eventually a dean position came open at the same college where I attended back when I was young. And I applied and I got the role. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? So I've been at it for 3 years for the dean. And these are positions that I've pivoted away a little bit, right, from the research and the science, but nonetheless, having that background gives you credibility to be able to do them and have the weight, right, in what you're saying. And having been the chair of a department, I know what my chairs are going through. And so we're colleagues. I think that now it's actually hard for me to digest that other deans have never been chairs, or sometimes even full-time faculty themselves. And like, really, how do you know what it is that they're going through? But anyway, so that's how.
They probably don't know. Okay, thank you. Okay, Arpita, on to you.
Yeah, so I guess I kind of answered this question already, in that the short answer is LinkedIn. I think the slightly longer answer is, because I was looking, I noticed that opportunity when it came up. I didn't actually change my CV at all when I sent it in, because they were looking for astronomers, and I'm hiring into Schmidt Sciences now, and I also look for astronomers, and sometimes astronomers will try to pivot their CV, and I'm like, no, just give me the full-on academic story, because what I'm looking for is your subject matter expertise. The rest is teachable. And so when I was transitioning, I spent a lot of time actually wrapping up my research group, saying I was done on all of my projects, which was probably the first time I'd done that like my whole career, because I tend to just take all my projects with me to the next job. And yeah, I think this is what I also tell astronomers now is it's good to learn how to tell the story of your experience, but based on your expertise, because an astrophysics physics PhD gives you an incredible amount of broad skills. And so, lean on those. You don't need a bunch of extra stuff. You're already doing it all.
Yeah, those are really good points, Arpita. Thank you. Okay, Anjali.
So a couple of quick things. I'm someone who in college, I hated writing. I took a foreign language in college, so I wouldn't have to write essays because if you don't know the language, you can't be coherent enough to write an essay. But my number one piece of advice for students is get really good at writing, right? Like you have to communicate things through publications and papers, even if you stay in academia. If you go out, kind of like Arpita just said, you're going to have to tell your story to other people. When you apply for jobs in any role you do, like get really good at communication. This can mean writing essays. It also can mean like composing tweets or, I don't know what the verb is for blue sky, right? But, I think you're in this arena where, especially if you're interested in science communication like I was, you have the opportunity to go to schools and to, do outreach in person, but you can also make videos and post them on TikTok or YouTube or, write on medium.com. Like there's very low overhead these days to having that opportunity to get yourself out there in the world. And I think once you start to plant a flag of what you do, right, you can sort of lean into that and people can find you and you can advertise yourself, right? Like the reason I became the head of vaccine data for LA County, like of 10 million people, is I clicked the contact us button on the bottom of their website and said, hey, I've been graphing your data just for fun to convince my mom to stay home because she won't stay home. And you guys have some bugs in your data. Do you need help? And here's my website. And they saw my website and went, great, come and help us. And so that's what I did for a while. So communication, reach out, be really proactive. People always ask me, how can I get into policy that seems really different? And you have to figure out what you want to get into, right? That's like saying, I want to get into science, right? That could mean anything, right? Even I want to get into astrophysics. You have to figure out what the things that matter to you are, right? And start doing them. The great thing about policy, communication, all these things is there are nonprofits, there are companies doing stuff. Just start showing up and helping out with that, and you can get involved. I will just say on the how to find a job, this is something I may need to do in the near future. I don't know. But I will say I have been unemployed before, right? I'm just going to own that. And I think I'm probably the only one here who has, right? When I finished my PhD, I sort of stupidly thought that as someone who had like a Harvard, MIT, Cambridge set of degrees and who had worked at the White House and who needed to move back to LA for personal reasons, how hard could it be to find a job, right? And it's something that, I wrote for the SAT exam for a little while, so I wasn't technically unemployed, but my rate was about $2 an hour. And so, I got my job in industry actually by going to a career fair, the old fashioned way, right? And, I got my job at JPL because I met people who actually then created this new role for me. But I'm someone who my biggest problem isn't applying for all of the jobs. It's trying to find something I want to do, right? Like it doesn't seem like there are many things at that intersection at Triple Point. And so I think if you're getting yourself out there and putting things up, people can find you a little bit easier. But also, I will just be really blunt. Most people, and Pierre can probably back me up on this, right? Like you need to not just put in like 10 applications like in a year. It's maybe like 10 applications in a week or in a day, because these days you need just volume if you're applying for jobs where other people are applying. So I have lots more thoughts. Again, happy to talk about being unemployed briefly to all of you. My mother didn't love it. But it's a reality, and you shouldn't think that it's any reflection on you, because that is what the world is like.
Yeah, thank you. Figuring out what you love to do is really, really, really important. I'll take the chair's prerogative for just a second. I got my PhD, went through grad school, got my PhD, right? And got a postdoc, and the expectation is, okay, next you're going to apply for faculty positions. Well, I figured out when I was a postdoc, I'm not sure I really want to be faculty. So what else can I do? And so I networked. I went to AAS meetings, and actually every job I've ever gotten I've gotten through networking at a AAS meeting. And I ran into David Ciardi, who's in the back here, and it's his fault that I'm here right now. And he convinced me. Thank you. He convinced me to apply for a staff scientist position at IPAC at what was then the Michelson Science Center. Then it turned into the NASA Exoplanet Science Institute, and and now I'm a manager. Like, I'm not even a scientist anymore, but I need, I need that science background to be able to relate to, the folks that are working with me, and to help make sure that they and I are telling that story to the public, to NASA, to, the community, to really, I don't know, to help people understand what we do and why it's important. And so I'm actually really happy that I did not get a faculty job. I never even applied for faculty positions, but I'm really happy. And I think it was that realization that, hey, even though back when I was a grad student, everybody and their uncle was applying for faculty jobs, you're not a failure if you don't. I know things are changing now, and they have been for the last few years, but you're not a failure if you don't either want or don't get a faculty job. There are lots of other things that you can do. And I mean, that's why we're having this panel. So, okay.
Can I just add one quick
Yes,
thing?
please, go
So
ahead.
I've noticed that a couple of us had mentioned something, and it may be a gendered thing, but I'm someone who didn't think about applying for the White House job when someone first sent it to me. I said no, and I actually only applied because I walked by the White House one day when I was visiting somebody in DC, and they were having a party inside, and I said, "Oh, that looks cool." But I think a lot of times, there's like some kind of barrier for people. They often attribute it to, females have this sort of notion that you must meet all of the requirements of a job before you apply. So I just want to call it out really quickly. Apply for things that you think you're not qualified for if it interests you and if you think you can do the job, and let them tell you no, right? Like, you don't need to self-select yourself down to no. Now, of course, be humble. Don't say like, oh, of course I can do all these things. I'm a PhD astronomer. Lots of other people have PhDs too. But just, I wanted to mention that because in the way that Dawn said, she didn't expect to be a manager, right? Or these other things. You don't know until you try.
Yeah, very true. Okay, next question, moving on. Okay, so what is something that you wish you knew as you were going through this process of transitioning from academia to non-academia? And okay, Arpita, we'll start with you this time. So something you wish you knew when you were making the transition. And maybe there's nothing, and I have a follow-up question if that's the case.
Well, I think even when I was thinking of leaving, I almost knew I didn't know this, but I didn't know how many awesome jobs are out there that can kind of scratch the science itch, like that check off all of those things that you enjoy about science. And going back to something we've been saying and Dawn said too, is figuring out what it is about the science that you do that is so fulfilling, means that then you can look for it in other places. And I feel like now that I am more in this kind of parallel world to academia, I see so many cool jobs that are, either nonprofit and science and policy, all of these things that make up the ecosystem of actually getting science done. And I couldn't really see it from within academia. So just so you know, it does exist. If you just kind of peer out of the box we put ourselves in, and that usually our advisors often tend to be from that box as well, is just have the courage to imagine that, what you want does exist out there, and then go looking for it.
Thank you. Okay, Farisa. So what do you wish you knew?
It's very similar, I think, in boxing ourselves in time and in space. I think that one of the things that my MO, just modus operandi, as I was going through school, I was trying to, I never had the opportunity to procrastinate because I had kids. I couldn't stay after class for office hours. I couldn't do study groups with my classmates often at all because, again, anybody in the crowd has children? Went to school. Woohoo! See? So you know what it is to try to have a job and go through school and have your babies. And so you can't linger. And so to me, I was always on the run. And I think that time-wise, right, I was always trying to hurry up, graduate, you get it done. And part of it was like, well, I'm a late bloomer. I started this a little too late. Like, you know, when am I going to graduate? And honestly, that's part of boxing yourself. And we need to relax. I wish I just kind of like relax, enjoy. Nobody's going to ask you how old you are when you graduate. Nobody's going to ask you, things like your GPA or, things that we worry so much about keeping perfect, and just enjoy. And honestly, as long as you're on the path, you're going to get curves thrown at you. But as long as you're on the path, 10 years are going to go by, whether you like it or not, at the same rate in this gravitational field, 1 second per second. So with degrees or without degrees, and just stay on it. Right?
Thank you. Pierre, what's something you wish you knew?
I think there is a lot of positives and negatives in any job you take, and it's a different set whether you stay in academia, be a faculty, or you do something else, or you go to an industry like I did. There is always like positive and negatives, and you can't just like, you have to kind of like balance it, and you need to figure out whether X job is a good match for you, because just because a job seems to be great for someone doesn't mean that it's a good match for yourself. So I would, I think I would advise, like, if you have friends who are in different like career paths, to talk to them and see like what their daily life or like day-to-day job looks like, to see if it could be a match for you.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Okay, Anjali?
So again, the first thing was just that it takes a lot of effort to find a job. That was something I wish I had known at the time, because I really thought it was some kind of reflection on me, just being terrible. But I think the other thing, just echoing what's been said a lot, is that there is such a variety of jobs that ex-astronomers fill, which makes sense because they're people. But, I mean, we had another person who was originally going to be on the panel who works at the Aerospace Corporation Sloan-Wilkowitz, and he was an instrument scientist, right? And he was saying, you hear all these stories about being in academia as a scientist of like, you work on this topic. He goes, but when you're a lab builder person, right? And you think like, oh, I have to go and be an engineer. I have to follow this path. And him and others have said, there's just such a variety of jobs you can do, even using the exact same skills. And again, we don't talk about it a lot in astronomy because what we study is up there. Whereas if you were a chemist, you're like, oh, it's the same thing. And so I think there is a real diversity of jobs. And so go out and do what you would do with any proposal. Get more data, right? Talk to people that do things that you're interested in or curious about, because you'll find, especially if they're an ex-astronomer, they're really sympathetic to you and are willing to give a little bit of their time to talk to you. And so take opportunities like this and others to reach out to folks and just, again, get that data so that you are like, oh yeah, there are all of these astronomers for some reason working for Bill Gates on disease modeling or this, that, or the other, because they're out there.
Okay, we've got like 13 minutes left. I do want to leave a little bit of time for questions that you all have, but I have one last, so maybe we can try to keep our answers short, or on the short side. So, what mistakes are there mistakes that you see people making if if you are in the business of hiring people or really just talking to people that are trying to leave academia? What mistakes do you see them making that we all here can avoid? And then if you have any special circumstances yourself that you want to shout out or give some information on, then, like, for instance, I know that Pierre was an international student and then came to the US, or for instance, Anjali went to grad school overseas. So anyway, all right. So what mistakes do you see other people making that the folks here can try to avoid? And I'll start with Farisa.
So this is not a mistake. This is more like I just really want to highlight that all of your skills, and just echoing what everybody's saying, are very useful in so many fields, right? I end up coding sometimes still to analyze data and so on. And you might not think that a program manager or a dean is coding, but I code because it's the only way to do it. When you have these skills, it's just like having a hammer, right? You are going to try the hammer everywhere. But mistakes, The only one that I'm thinking about or comes to mind quickly is that I'm in a lot of hiring committees, from administration, from presidents to, vice presidents of campuses, deans, et cetera, to faculty, lots of faculty, all my faculty, all of STEM, I review those. And so when I get the CVs for all the candidates and we need to like shorten the list, the things that don't look so great is when a candidate has been jumping from a place to another place and they stay only for about 6 months. So trying several things is not frowned upon. It's like, okay, this person has various interests. But when they've had several jobs in the past 5 years and it's been like 6 months, 6 months, 6 months, like, oh, that raises a very big flag. Watch out.
I would say when you are writing your resume or interviewing, be specific, right? And say sort of what you accomplished. And I find it's really helpful as you're going in grad school or any job to keep a list for yourself of what you've done. Because saying like, I care about trash is a much less effective statement than I sorted through 25 pounds of compost after the Christmas party to save the trash. Like one of those things you'll be memorable for. That is a thing I did in graduate school because I do care about trash. And I think that is the other part of it, is to be memorable, right? And that's part of those specifics, because if people don't remember you, they can't bring you back in whatever capacity. Okay, so be memorable and be specific. The end.
Thanks. Okay, Arpita.
This isn't like a mistake, but I think that's something that used to be true, which is less true now, which I think it used to be that if you left academia, you shut that door firmly behind you. And so then it becomes kind of a difficult decision to make because you've spent years in this field with lots of colleagues and your science. But I think it's becoming more possible to go back. And I think, again, it comes down to telling your story of what you were doing in those years when you were away from academia. And I'll echo what Anjali was saying, which is when you're talking about yourself, I think sometimes we oversimplify so that the other person understands. I think sometimes there's value in like standing in your expertise and saying all the details and then explaining it down to them. So don't lose that the ability to speak technically as well, because there's great value in that.
Thank you. Okay, last but not least, Pierre.
Mistakes. So many mistakes. It's hard for me to pick which one. I've talked to like a lot of people who are trying to move from astronomy to the industry, and like really like people never, like this is not a skill that's being taught. So that's why there's so many mistakes. But I think one mistake that I would like to call out is, especially we are applying in tech, which is the industry that I'm most familiar with, don't underestimate people in the industry. Don't write things on your resume that you think, okay, like, like I have a PhD, I'm so smart. Like these people are just like, some industry, whatever. And so I can just like write whatever and they wouldn't even know what they're talking about. So I can just like say whatever. That does not work. It's very easy to sniff out, like if you write something that in your CV that you are not as comfortable with. So, and also, while it's true that going through a PhD gives you a lot of skills that's sellable, often those skills are not rounded out with a lot of like some other, like skills in the periphery that is necessary to make you like a well-rounded candidate in the industry. So before you apply, try to patch up some skills that like you might not learn in academia. So for example, in academia, you probably know how to do like data analysis very well, but you might not know how to do like more on the software engineering side. So there are like lots of sites now that you can just go and learn and patch up these skills. So it's not a big deal, but make sure to do it before you apply.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, do we have questions either in the room or online? All right, if you have questions, come down, and you're in the room, come to the microphone. If you're online, put them in.
There's an online question.
Yep, go ahead, Tracy.
for Anjali or any other panelist, because Anjali, earlier you were talking about applying jobs in high volumes, like 10 jobs per month or something like that. So this person basically asking, when you apply for jobs, you also need to tailor your resumes, for different jobs. So how do you balance applying in high volumes with tailoring applications and the reading required to do so?
So, and again, do as I say, not as I do, because I don't think I've ever applied for 10 jobs in a week, but I feel that that is the right thing. And so it's important to tailor it. I think it's that you just don't want to let so much time pass in tailoring it that you obsess about the one job for like 2 months and then put something in, because the return on that investment of your time is not necessarily going to be paid back. So I think it's more just having this awareness that that is the reality of the world. And I say this in part because I also have a lot of friends from DC right now who are currently looking for new jobs, right? Who are all senior people, scientists, managers, executives, whatever, right? And they're finding that this notion of like, oh, well, I did all of this, like it must be easy, but there's just sort of a shortage of things, right? And so you just have to play the volumes game in the same way that like you wouldn't apply to a single college for admission, right? You would probably apply to a handful. So I'm saying for jobs, just think about that as like an order of magnitude up.
Okay, go ahead.
Thinking alternative funding, because you see with my poster, I know what to do. So I appreciate Arpita point that you've shown philanthropy as a possible alternative, the third alternative. Okay. Oh.
Could you all hear him online? No. Okay. Hang on.
I'm seeking alternative, and I've identified three. Arpita, the looking for philanthropy. You've given me the third. The first alternative that I've thought of that we haven't discussed is making our own philanthropy or YouTube, that sort of publicity person. And the other one is foreign. And again, Arpita, I don't know if there's philanthropy in foreign or even foreign academia. So I'd appreciate knowing, Arpita, if you know, when we already know what we're wanting to do, how to find the alternative philanthropic support, or if you could talk about the YouTube philanthropy foreign.
Arpita, do you have anything you can?
Yeah, maybe I'll try and answer the question of like, if you're interested in philanthropy, how do you find a position in philanthropy? Because I do get asked that sometimes.
But both domestically and abroad, I think was.
Yeah, so
Question.
science philanthropy does exist globally, but I'll say is there's much higher volumes of it in the US. That being said, lots of the philanthropies operate globally, so it almost doesn't matter where the philanthropy is headquartered versus where they're active. Unfortunately, there isn't a single place to look up philanthropy jobs. The closest thing is the Science Philanthropy Alliance, which I think tries to put out some jobs, but it's, they're short-staffed and trying to be comprehensive there also. But I'd say if you're interested in philanthropy, start following people on LinkedIn who work in philanthropy, and then you'll start seeing these positions pop up. They are smaller in number, but they're not zero. So just kind of be in the right network, and then you'll see the opportunities.
Thanks. Okay. Next in the room here.
Hi, my name's Alex. Thank you for this. This might be a big question, but as a graduate student who is defending in the next year, and many of my friends who are imminently defending in the next year within the next 2 years, I think everybody who's been through it knows that it's a scary, stressful time, especially in the current environment. And so I guess my question is, how can we support people through that, especially those people who you've mentioned before who planned for years, plans A, B, C, D, E, and F for all astrophysics, and they're quickly realizing they need a plan G. How can we help support our friends going through that? That might be a big question, but it's one thing about a lot.
That's it. Oh, well, if anybody else wants to take that first, I can try to think of something. Well,
Sorry.
yeah. No, that is a really good question. how can we help support them? I mean, there are, yeah, okay. If you have something, go ahead.
I can add something in the meantime. So that's why I did everything at the same time. I was defending, and I was already working at JPL Right for many years, and I also had a little business on the side. And in fact, when I completed the master's at a different institution than where I went to do the PhD, that master's allowed me to start teaching. And I didn't know that you can start teaching at the community college level physics and astronomy introductory courses. And I just wanted to like try out to see how it was. And I found that it was a lot of fun. And I was laughing all the time in the classroom with the students. And it's a lot of fun. And so I think that just gaining these various experiences as you have your PhD, and I know that's very, very important. It's your baby, but also it turns out that you're the one doing the work. You're the one publishing these papers. By the time you get to defend, they're already published. So what are they going to do? Say, go back to, no, because they're already published, right? So actually it shouldn't be as stressful as we impose on ourselves, I think. But do other things at the same time, I think helps, like teaching.
And yeah, yeah, she's amazing. To add to that, to support our colleagues. So I would say, talk to each other, right? So, talk to the folks that are here. When you go to other meetings, talk to those people. They can be your peers. They can be, your mentors. Networking works. And so, and also like, a lot of us are going through the same thing at the same time, right? I mean, I do not envy the folks that are in your position right now that are, defending soon and needing to find jobs to start your career. Yeah, I've been doing this for a while now. Based on the NASA budget, I may not have a job in October, right? So it is scary for a lot of us. And I think everybody understanding that it doesn't help anything, but it's a little bit of comfort. And just trying to talk to each other to find possibilities. And that's one reason why this panel has been set up this way also, to really let everybody know there's a lot of different opportunities out there. And it doesn't have to be just faculty. You can go work at a science center, you can go work in an observatory, you can go work in industry or philanthropy. You all have a lot of transferable skills. And so, yeah, I guess just talk to each other. Yeah, I don't have a better answer than that. But
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay.
Maybe I can add to someone who's like, my plan was ABCDEF is all astrophysics.
Yes, please go ahead, Pierre.
I did not have any plan of leaving astrophysics, but I think a lot of that also has to do with me not knowing what's outside of astrophysics. So I think maybe like one way to support someone who's going through this and like suddenly now at the 11th hour needing to figure out like a job that's not astrophysics is to help them navigate through what kind of options are out there, what kind of jobs are out there. And if you have connections that perhaps they don't have, of perhaps you have friends who are in the industry and you think they have like an interesting job, you should like connect them to your friends who don't have this kind of broad perspective. There are lots of very intellectually challenging things outside of astrophysics, and it's not the case that if you leave academia or leave astrophysics, then you'd be like bored forever.
If I can quickly add something, I think also, in the spirit of networking and getting to know other career paths, people often reach out for informational interviews. And I think given the current climate, it would make a lot of sense to kind of team up and ask for someone to talk to you. Because if you send the individual request, they might not have time. But if it's, 5 astronomers who would love to talk about their career path, people are happy to do that.
That's a great idea. Thanks, Arpita. Okay. Next question. So I realize it's 5:03 and we said we were going to end at 5, but everybody seems like they're still paying attention. So we're going to keep going for a few more minutes. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Can you hear me in this? Okay. So I hope this isn't too niche of a question so other people get things out of it. It might be a Farisa question, but anyone who wants to respond, feel free. So I'm Amy. I guess I should introduce myself. I'm Amy. I'm a recent PhD graduate, and I thank you. I work at a teeny tiny women's college, and I love my job so much. And the thing that I discovered in grad school is that basically I don't want to work at an R1. It was soul crushing. I don't do my best work in research in that environment. I do better when I'm at a place that's like where I'm at now. And so I'm in this space where like, I love what I do. I enjoy teaching so much. And I desperately want to keep doing research too. And I don't want to like be in charge of something. I don't want to be the person who goes and gets the grants because that's not what I do best. I don't need that stress. I'm so much better when I can just focus on the research. So I'm wondering, is this a niche that exists? Like, how do you collaborate with people basically? How do you find a way to like keep doing research and be part of like a team? I was hoping grad school would be like that and it wasn't, but how do you like be part of a team basically rather than whatever it is that you otherwise would do? I hope that question made sense.
You get an army of minions, not grad students. No. Well, the way I managed to do research, and I had a full-time job teaching, that really only required 15 units at the community college. Interestingly, just salary-wise, was $5K higher than the Cal State universities, and very compatible with like the UCs and so on, depending on what it is that you're bringing in. But yeah, you don't have the mechanisms to build an empire of research students. However, I was teaching and I had students engaging in projects. And so, yeah, I was in charge of that, but we didn't need any funding. We were doing as independent study research. And then I would bring them to do internships at JPL. And at JPL, I did have some funding as an astronomer with some soft funding and so on. So there's a lot of cross-pollination that I was able to do without necessarily having to bring in the funds at the campus when I'm teaching at a community college. So that's how that worked.
Thank you.
I wonder. Oh,
No, I was wondering.
oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know if Arpita or Pierre, if you have anything to add to that.
I guess I'd say if you're looking for collaborators, Amy, there are probably lots of other people just like you out there at kind of isolated colleges looking for collaborators. So I think just keep talking to people and asking, and you'll find them.
Yeah, let them know what your niche is, right? What you do, what you love to do, and what type of research you're working on or that you like to work on. Networking. And yeah, and then hopefully you'll find somebody who actually likes to write the proposals and get the money rather than actually do the work, that the rest of the work. It's all work. But yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Good luck. Good luck, Amy.
Yes, good luck. David.
Sorry, I almost tripped. Hi, this is David Charity from Nexi. It's more of a comment that I'm hoping that will lead to you guys to comment, which is one of the things that you guys have alluded to, all of you. One of the things that you guys have all alluded to, every single one of you, but not really said, is perseverance, and that you have persevered through your personal issues, your external issues. And I think this crowd would really like to hear a little bit about how you found that perseverance, because I think, and it's hard, it's a hard question, right? But I know Dawn extraordinarily well, and I know each of you fairly well, right? And I think that this crowd, me personally, I've also gone through my own personal issues over the years, right? And so I think, your stories are each individual, but every single one of them had perseverance in them. And I think that's something that this crowd should really take from this discussion.
Thank you. All right. Does somebody want to start that? Or, I mean, I could, but you're the panel. All right. Well, okay. I guess mine's a combination of personal and professional. When I was in grad school, so I went to Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute to get my undergraduate degree in physics, and I was one of 3 women in the physics department at that point. And I had several professors, several professors who thought like this, but one of which was very vocal that women should not be in the classroom at all. And he refused to speak to me. He would only talk to my lab partner, who was male. And this went on all semester. And I ran into the head of the department in the hallway one day, and I had just tried to have a conversation with my professor, and I was visibly upset. And so the chair actually was a good person, and he actually almost got, well, he told me if I wanted him fired that he would make that happen, but I did not fire him or have the power to do that. But anyway, so I was being told on an almost daily basis, you don't belong here. You should not be here. You are not smart enough for this. You are not, whatever. And then getting through grad school was really tough for me. So I graduated undergrad. I went to New Mexico State University for graduate school. I wanted to be an observational astronomer. They had good telescope access. And I was coming from a physics background, and the qualifying exams were done in a way, they were cumulative exams. You started like the week you got to the school as a first year, and it was like it was terrifying to me and devastating. And it took me quite a long time to get through my qualifying. But then I'm happy to say after that, with the research part, I was actually the first to graduate in my class with my PhD. So, but that that was not a fun time for me. And I'm actually kind of looking back, I'm kind of surprised I stayed in the field. So then at that point, I had a two-body problem. And so trying to find two jobs in the same place, because my spouse was also an astronomer, trying to find two jobs in the same place was hard. So we ended up, he was still finishing in New Mexico. I got a job in San Diego. My first postdoc, I was at UC San Diego as a CAS postdoc fellow. We saw each other once a month. Then he finished, moved to San Diego, and then got a job up here at Caltech, actually, while I was still at San Diego. And we saw each other once a week. And then we were like, this is ridiculous. We should live together. We lived in Orange County and commuted, and it was horrible. It was terrible. And then I got pregnant with my son, my oldest, and I cannot do this anymore. And so, I asked around and talked to, was convinced to apply here. And then I took the job here. I had no qualifications when I took the job here. Somehow I talked my way through this job was to run meetings and telescope allocation committees and things like that. I had never done anything like that before. I didn't know how to do those things, but I'm pretty organized, and turns out I actually liked that stuff. So anyway, so it was kind of personal and professional tough times. So, all right. Anybody else?
So this is going to be a shameless plug. Go watch the video for the proto workshop yesterday, because we actually had a whole session about these things, including resilience. And because my answer actually is the same as we discussed yesterday, which is think about your values, right? Like, why are you where you are, and stick to those. And then when things go sideways, right? Like, you do want to figure out what's your threshold beyond which you're like, no, I'm out. But once you know what your values are and where your line is, that'll help you through all kinds of decisions, right? So if anyone wants to hear lots of traumatic stories, we can go outside on the patio and talk about it, both academic, like when I give career talks at various universities, I actually have a slide that has not every, but many negative comments that I have received from people that I have worked with or been advised by in the past. And it's amazing. And the reason I keep that slide is because that's usually a conversation starter for people to say, oh, I've heard that too, or something like this, that, or the other. And that's really unfortunate. I'm sorry. Like we shouldn't just say, oh, it's okay. Like, no, it's not okay. Right. And we should do better. But given that this happened, right, like, let's find a way through, and in a variety of circumstances. So whether the political environment or anything else is feeling not quite right, just understand where you stand and go watch the proto workshop. Chrissy Ricci's talk yesterday was amazing.
I'll say, can I jump in? Or should we? It's one day at a time. you know, just one day at a time. It's okay, and you should, and we all should have an ideal scenario with whatever you want, rainbows and unicorns and everything else you want to see on it. But, and you keep going in that direction, right? So your cone of existence, and as time goes forward, you move in that direction. But you have to take one day at a time. And you have to also be really honest with yourself, because at the beginning of me transferring to UCLA and having, you know, the stakes are higher and the kids and the schedules and the 405 and and everything else in Southern California. It was like, okay, I have to be honest with myself, because these kids have activities. They have to go to karate, and I have to do my quantum homework because it's due next week and I have to get started now. And my classmates wouldn't get started. And I'm like, really? Did you look at number 5? Like, and they hadn't. And like, how can you? So anyway, I had to learn to be honest with myself, which was learning these boundaries, right? And say, okay, if I'm being a parent, I'm going to be the best parent I can, because later I'm going to be a really good student. Later, even that day, right? Or the next day or so on, when they're in school and I'm in school, and I'm going to be the best student I can with intensity. And when I'm being a really good student, I'm being a terrible parent, because you're not thinking of anything having to do with the kids. So for those of you that have family or thinking of family, it's doable when you put yourself in the moment and say, I'm going to be a parent right now. No school or so on. And sometimes you can divide it, right? They were doing karate and I was doing quantum on the side. Sometimes you can, but often you just have to embrace it and be the best parent in that moment. And then later you're the best student, and then later you're the best worker, and be honest with yourself, and yeah, be ready to take those curves, and one day at a time. One day you'll get there. Remember, those 10 years will pass with degrees or without degrees. How would you like it? So keep going.
Thank you. Okay, online, anybody, Pierre or Arpita? You don't have
Yeah.
to respond, but if you want to, you can.
I'll say that the thing that really like keeps me going are you know, like my friends and family, and you know, like I think one thing that I really appreciate, or I really was blessed in astronomy, were the people. Like the people that I met in astronomy are like, they're some of the greatest people ever. And if you have these kinds of support structure from your friends or your family or whatever, you should leverage them to get you past your troubles. You know, it's like it's okay to have a night together where you just like cry on each other's shoulders about like, you know, like applications or whatever.
Arpita, anything you want to add?
I'll say it's making me wish I was over there, because it's hard to share trauma stories virtually. But I guess one thing I'll say, which has my mindset has changed a bit after leaving academia, in that I'm a lot less perfectionistic. I think with the best of intentions, we hold ourselves to very high standards in academia. And I think, you know, some things deserve your very, very best, but not every single thing that comes your way deserves your very, very best. And so being able to, I also have small children, it's not possible to do everything at 100%. And so I think deciding which things to do at like B+ and out the door, that's all it needed, so that you can reserve your effort for the things that really need A+ work. And I kind of wish I'd applied that when I was in academia. It would have made life a lot happier. And also, I mean, be kind to yourself. I think there's a lot of like literal negativity people throw at you, but a lot of it is imbibed in your head. And so the way you talk to yourself about both the successes and the failures are really important. So yeah, be nice to yourself.
Perfect. Okay. 30-second, and then we're 30 seconds from each of us, and then we're done. What one thing, and maybe you've said it before, or maybe you haven't said it yet, what one thing do you want them to take away? Anjali.
So practice communication and be kind to others, because we've talked about networking a lot, and that isn't just up or down, that's also sideways. And if you're not kind, this doesn't work. So be kind to yourself and others.
Yeah, I won't add anything else other than that repeating, right? Be kind to yourself. Give yourself that treat right? Because you're sacrificing so much, especially as you get through grad school and your defense and all of this. But once a week, right, you have that one treat that you get to look forward to. And that's being kind to yourself. It's like you haven't forgotten about you.
Great. Okay, Pierre.
I think you have to, in this, especially in this kind of job climate, which is very difficult, to be kind of realistic on what your goals are from a job search. So perhaps even if you don't get like what's, like your dream job straight out of the gate, that doesn't mean that's like a close thing that you won't be able to do it. It's okay to get like a B+ job first for a couple years. The hardest job to get is the first one out of academia. So the next one would be easier. So it's okay to like upgrade. And if any of you want to go to tech or to the climate space or anything like that, I'd be happy to talk to you in person if you want to. Sorry, not in person, like one-on-one if you want to.
Okay, Arpita.
Yeah, I think to kind of continue that theme, the world is a big place. There's a lot of different opportunities. I think because we think of how big the universe is, it makes it seem like the world and its potential is something we understand well. And especially, in some fields, you feel like you know everybody who does exoplanets, right? What else could there be? You know all the jobs that are out there. That's not true. Look around. There's a lot going on that we don't see from within academia.
And I'll just end with saying everybody's path is different, right? Everybody, your path is going to be very different or could be very different from the person sitting next to you. And so be kind to yourself, figure out what you love. And if it's something you're really passionate about, keep working at it, right? So I started as a staff scientist. I then became the lead of the science affairs group. Then I became deputy director for Nexi, and now I'm the manager of the whole NASA exoplanet program, which just still blows my mind. So if you love it, keep working at it, and and be kind to yourself. So thank you, everybody, and thank you to the panelists.